Hey Michael, this is Keaton Everett with ABC, going over your pitching video from camp. I'm going to go through and talk a little bit about your mechanics and ways we can kind of get you a little more efficient and just sort of ways that we can utilize our body to get ourselves throwing, the most powerful position, creating the most velocity we can, and also most importantly, keeping ourselves in a nice, healthy position. All right. So, for you got pretty good sort of basis for everything. You're pretty clean. You're getting down the hill really well. Now it's just a matter of keeping your weight back and using that lower half a little bit more, staying through your backside. I'll kind of go through and explain a little bit more. But the biggest thing with you, you're a big kid, and we got to make sure that we're utilizing that body, we're utilizing that lower half, and just staying back a little bit more. And I'll go through and talk a little bit more about that. So we'll kind of go through step by step. Start with the setup and sort of go through your entire motion and kind of go from there. All right. So your initial setup here. All right. This initial start is all about getting consistent. It's all about making it as efficient as we can. We're able to repeat our delivery, and the ability for us to repeat basically what happens from here to here is going to dictate basically how we're going to finish. All right, so this is really the most important sort of part, how we set up, how we start, what our timing is there, and then the other stuff just kind of falls into place. There's a little bit that can happen here and there, but the biggest thing or most problems out front are going to happen are back in here. All right, so your initial setup, what we look for here is we look for efficiency of balance, we look for posture, we look for timing and everything. All right, so we're just going to draw a line sort of through your spine where your head is and go through it and kind of look at everything. All right, so the biggest thing that we see, I think the camera moves a little bit. So let's try to, there's like a little bit of shift in the camera. But anyways, you can kind of see how right when you start to go, your head kind of moves out of that box. All right, so we want to try to get to a point where you're already loaded up on that backside so that head doesn't move forward. You're thinking like sprinters on the sprinter blocks. They're already loaded back. That gun goes off their first movement forward, so we don't want any kind of wasted movement back. All right, so just get that initial setup over that back leg. One other thing you can watch are your hands. You can kind of see your hands starting to sort of turn with your body. All right, you can see the hands kind of moving back. We want to try to keep those right around our chest somewhere. All right, so I can't really tell if they're out away from your body. You kind of want them a little bit closer to your body. And again, it's just easier to repeat. It's easier to get consistent. So just try to sort of limit that movement. Basically is this upper body. If we're just looking into this upper body, we shouldn't really see any movement with our shoulders, with our hands, with our posture until we sort of start to go forward and our hands break. All right, so there's just a little bit of cleaning up there for you. And then the other biggest thing is, we want to try to stay a little bit taller through our motion, all right, through our delivery. We kind of want our head to follow a straight line. And you can see as you start to go, you kind of get that dip and that drive, all right? So, you're coming down, your knees almost completely flexed at 90 degrees, all right, before you really make any movement forward, all right? So we kind of draw where your hips are too right here. All right, you can kind of see how there's a little bit of hip there, but your body really hasn't moved, that head hasn't moved out of that box until, about right here. So we want to try to get that point of, instead of dropping down below that box as our legs going down, is we want to try to get a little bit more momentum, stay a little bit taller, so when those hips start going forward, we're not going to drop down out of that box, we're going to be going forward, all right? So right at the height of your leg kick, which is right here, all right, you're doing pretty good at getting your leg out over that back foot. We really want to get those hips closed. So at this point, we'd have our hands tucked in a little bit more, and at this point, this is our balance point, is we want to see hips go forward first. We want to see that ball pop out of our glove, all right, and then all this leg does is this leg just kind of stays closed and just kind of drags behind your hips. We don't really want to ever get out in front of our hips until, down here somewhere. All right, so at this point here, instead of seeing that drop here, all right, you can see that kind of that lean back. A little bit of drop's fine, but we don't want to get too much. And so at this point, instead of being, down here, we want to try to get, probably we'll go back and mark where your head would be. So you'd want to be right here. All right, so as we get forward here, your hands are breaking, your legs going down. At this point, we'd like to see you a little bit farther forward, maybe right about, here. Your head's out front this way. All right, and then your leg still hasn't got past your hips yet. All right, so we're just wanting to try to stay a little bit taller and just try to get going a little bit quicker, because what you're going to see what that leads to is when you drop down, and you can see this posture change to this lean back. We want to really never ever see a whole lot this way, maybe a little bit back there, but you're just getting a little bit extreme. What you're going to see what this leads to is just sort of this rock where you're going to be here, and then all of a sudden you're going to be out front too early, and so then at foot strike, all right, you're going to see that you've already started to rotate, and your foot's coming off the ground right here before you're releasing the ball. All right, so if you're thinking about boxing or punching somebody, if you're going to do that, what's more powerful, 1 foot on the ground or 2? So you're just kind of losing a little bit of energy, some power just coming off early, and that's just from that rock. All right, you do get good at getting down the mound, getting extension. All right, so at this foot strike right here, which is right there, this is it's a pretty good spot that you're getting to. All right, it's a pretty good foundation here. What we want to try to see is you have a good setup here. Your hips are starting to turn a little bit, all right, and you're starting to see your shoulders turn a little bit too with the hips, which we want to try to see a little bit more. But all it is that as you're landing, all right, you kind of see how this front foot kind of goes on the heel, your knees sort of over your foot. Is we want to try to see a little bit more. This extension is probably pretty good. That's good distance. But we want to try to see that knee a little bit farther back behind your heel. All right, so you're still back here a little bit more. All right, in that back side. That's just kind of what we're talking about, that rock, which sort of makes you jump out front a little bit early. All right, that's going to keep you closed a little bit longer. All right, your elbow probably wouldn't be that far that back, but you'd be about right there. So that as you release, you come through, that foot's going to stay on the ground. You're going to be able to drive all the way through that back foot. All right, you're going to start seeing your head stand a little bit over that knee, over that front foot, and then you'll be able to drive off that back foot instead of having it off the ground. And you can see here, you really get that point of pushing the ball with that elbow. All right, you can see how we got a lot of gap, a lot of air between that elbow and that head. And what this does is that's put a lot of strain on that elbow. All right, so that could, as you get older and get stronger, that's going to lead to some injuries. Is we want to try to see you staying through that back leg so your upper body stays ahead and with your elbow. All right, so now if you release, instead of releasing the ball with your upper body here, you're going to stay through that back leg, create a little bit more of almost a triangle. That head's going to be out over that front foot a little bit more, that chest over that front foot. And now that elbow's not going to be out in front of your head, all right? And so you can see at that release point, that back leg's crunched up here, and you're just releasing the ball. When we're just releasing the ball, we still want to see leg, foot on the ground, all right, driving all the way through, head out over that front foot, all right? So that's all that is instead of crunching this leg up, stay through a little bit longer to drive out, and so now that body stays ahead of that arm. You're able to get more velocity, more power, then kind of pop it up. And all it is just that sort of that posture change, and then that little kick forward early. So just try to keep your posture, stay taller, get going down the mound a little bit quicker, but stay in that back leg longer and drive all the way through that back leg. Feel that back leg straighten up before that ball gets released. So I mean, there's a good foundation for you. And you got a good sort of sense of tempo and how everything's working. You got a good foot strike area. Now just stay back longer, keep that posture, and you're going to be good to go. So thanks for making it out to camp. Hopefully you had a great time, and we look forward to seeing you again with ABC.